As the sun set over the horizon, the old amusement park's gate creaked open, inviting a chill in the air. The entrance was adorned with faded banners and chipped paint, giving off an eerie vibe. The gatekeeper, a mysterious figure who seemed to blend into the shadows, greeted the visitors with an unsettling smile. Despite the park's dilapidated state, the allure of adventure pulled the group in. They passed through the archway, unaware that the gatekeeper watched them intently, almost as if counting. The air grew colder as they ventured further, the laughter of the past echoing faintly around them. The gatekeeper disappeared from sight, leaving the entrance to swing shut on its own. The night began with a whimsical ride on the old carousel, its once vibrant colors now muted by time. The horses, worn and chipped, seemed to move of their own accord, their eyes almost lifelike. As the ride started, the lights flickered, casting long shadows on the faces of the riders. A haunting melody played, not quite matching the speed of the spinning platform. The horses' expressions twisted, and a low murmur filled the air, as if the ride itself were whispering. One rider swore they saw a child in a mirror on the carousel's center pole, but when they looked again, it was gone. The ride slowed to a stop, the atmosphere heavy with an unspoken dread. They left the carousel, each feeling a chill that had nothing to do with the cool night air. Drawn by curiosity, the group wandered into the funhouse, a labyrinth of distorted mirrors and strange noises. Inside, the laughter of unseen children echoed, unnervingly out of sync with their surroundings. The air was thick with an odd, musty scent, and the floors creaked underfoot. As they moved deeper, the reflections in the mirrors began to warp, showing twisted versions of themselves. One mirror showed them as skeletal figures, while another revealed faces not their own standing behind them. Panic set in as they struggled to find the exit, the walls seeming to close in. The whispers grew louder, voices pleading, crying, and sometimes laughing. They'd finally stumbled out, breathless, their reflections in the entrance mirrors waving goodbye as if relieved to see them go. Next, they approached the Ferris wheel, its giant, creaking structure looming ominously against the night sky. The ride operator, an expressionless figure, wordlessly gestured them into the swaying seats. As the wheel slowly ascended, the park below looked like a ghost town, its attractions silent and still. Halfway up, the wheel jerked to a stop, leaving them suspended high above. A cold wind picked up, carrying faint voices that seemed to come from the caverns themselves. The temperature dropped sharply, and the metal structure groaned as if under strain. One of the riders felt a clammy hand brush their shoulder, only to find no one there. Just as suddenly, the wheel began to move again, descending them into a world that felt subtly changed. They disembarked with shaky legs, each feeling as if they'd left a part of themselves behind. Curiosity led them to the maze of mirrors, an attraction that promised to challenge perception. Inside, the maze twisted and turned, with each path reflecting endless possibilities. As they navigated the corridors, the mirrors began to distort reality in unsettling ways. They saw reflections of themselves trapped in strange, alternate realities, some joyful, others terrifying. One person saw a reflection with an empty face, while another caught a glimpse of a version of themselves aged beyond recognition. The paths seemed to shift, trapping them in an endless loop. Panic set in as they couldn't distinguish between reflections and reality. Just when it felt like the walls were closing in, they stumbled upon the exit. As they left, they felt a lingering disorientation, as if the maze had altered their sense of self. The group found themselves drawn to the abandoned coaster, a once thrilling ride now left to decay. The wooden structure groaned in the wind, and the air was filled with the scent of old, rotting wood. Ignoring the "Do Not Enter" signs, they climbed into the rickety cars, the track stretching out into darkness. The coaster began with a slow, agonizing ascent, the clanking of chains echoing ominously. At the peak, they were plunged into a pitch-black tunnel, the world outside vanishing. Screams echoed around them, not their own, but from the shadows. The ride twisted and turned, seemingly endless, with ghastly apparitions flickering in the darkness. Just as suddenly as it began, the coaster screeched to a halt. They emerged, shaken, feeling as if they'd experienced more than just a ride. The air grew thick with a heavy, oppressive atmosphere as they approached the big top, now hosting a macabre circus show. The ringmaster, dressed in faded, tattered clothing, greeted them with a toothy grin that didn't reach his eyes. clowns with unsettling, exaggerated features performed bizarre, almost ritualistic acts. The laughter of the clowns was hollow, echoing in the vast emptiness of the tent. As the show progressed, the clowns' antics became increasingly grotesque, their painted smiles twisting into something more sinister. One by one, the group felt the clowns' eyes follow them, as if silently mocking their fear. The show ended abruptly, with the ringmaster bowing deeply, his eyes gleaming with dark amusement. The tent fell into darkness, and when the lights flickered back on, the clowns had vanished. Drawn by an inexplicable force, the group wandered to a secluded part of the park, where they discovered an unmarked grave. The ground was uneven, as if something had recently disturbed it. An old, rusted shovel lay nearby, its handle worn and splintered. The air was thick with the scent of earth and something else, something decayed. As they stood around the grave, they felt a chill run down their spines, as if unseen eyes were watching. One of them knelt to inspect the ground, feeling the overwhelming urge to dig. As they scraped away at the dirt, a hand, cold and clammy, grabbed their wrist. They recoiled, the hand vanishing as if it had never been. A low, mournful wail echoed around them, urging them to leave. They fled, leaving the grave undisturbed, but the feeling of being watched lingered. They stumbled upon the ghost train, an old forgotten ride that seemed to beckon them with a life of its own. The train's paint was peeling, and the cars looked barely able to hold together. As they boarded, a thick fog enveloped the track, obscuring everything beyond. The train jerked to life, taking them through a series of dark tunnels and eerie tableaux. Ghostly figures appeared in the mist, their faces pale and eyes hollow. The air was filled with whispers and soft cries, blending with the sound of the train's wheels. At one point, the train stopped abruptly, and a spectral figure floated towards them, its face a mask of sorrow. The train resumed its journey, leaving the apparition behind. When they finally exited the ride, they felt a weight lift from their shoulders, as if the train had carried some burden of theirs away. The night ended at the park's centerpiece, a grand, twisted roller coaster known as the Final Ride. The tracks wound up into the darkness, disappearing into the void. The group hesitated but felt an irresistible pull to experience one last thrill. They climbed into the cars, the safety bar clicking into place with an ominous finality. The ride began with a steep climb, the clatter of the tracks filling the silence. At the peak, the world stretched out below them, vast and empty. Then, with a stomach-churning drop, they were plunged into a series of loops and corkscrews. As they sped along the track, strange visions flashed before their eyes. Faces, places, moments from their lives. The ride's pace increased, the visions blurring into a dizzying montage. Suddenly, the cars screeched to a halt, leaving them breathless and shaken. As they disembarked, they felt a profound sense of closure, as if the park had tested them and found them worthy. The group left the amusement park, the gate creaking shut behind them, but the memories of the night's terrors would haunt them forever. The amusement park, nestled on the edge of a dense, dark forest, had been abandoned for years, its rides left to rust and decay. On a dare, a group of friends decided to explore the eerie grounds after hearing tales of strange happenings in the area. As they wandered through the creaking gates, the air grew thick with the scent of rotting wood and the faint sound of music, seemingly playing from nowhere. They stumbled upon an old map marked with faded ink, which promised a hidden attraction deep within the park. Curiosity piqued, they ventured further, their flashlights flickering ominously. The deeper they went, the more the atmosphere changed. It felt as if the forest itself was alive, watching them. As they passed the old roller coaster, its cars dangling precariously, they heard the rustling of leaves, though there was no wind. A thick fog began to roll in, cloaking the ground in an eerie cold mist. The group found an old, seemingly untouched merry-go-round, its horses frozen mid-gallop, covered in moss and vines. The music from before grew louder, as if urging them closer, and with a jolt, the carousel began to turn on its own. Panic set in, and they quickly moved on, unease settling in their bones. They reached a decrepit funhouse, its once bright colors faded to ghostly pastels. Inside, they encountered distorted mirrors and unsettling laughter echoing through the halls. As they navigated the twisting passageways, they felt a cold breeze despite the closed doors. One of them swore they saw a shadow darting just out of sight, but the others dismissed it as a trick of the light. Just when they thought they'd found an exit, the doors slammed shut, trapping them inside. The lights flickered, and the funhouse was plunged into darkness. After what felt like hours, the lights returned, revealing the group had somehow been separated. Panic-stricken, they called out for each other, their voices swallowed by the oppressive silence. Each friend found themselves in different parts of the park, disoriented and scared. The pathways seemed to shift, leading them in circles. One stumbled upon a forgotten shooting gallery, the targets resembling lifelike figures of park visitors. Another found themselves at a game booth, the stuffed prizes hanging limply, eyes glinting maliciously in the dim light. As they tried to find each other, they began noticing more disturbing sights. A swing set swaying without wind, an arcade machine blinking with static-filled screens showing eerie messages. The atmosphere grew colder, and a palpable sense of dread enveloped them. They could hear whispers, like voices just out of reach, speaking in an ancient, unintelligible tongue. The ground beneath their feet seemed to pulse, and they felt an unshakable sensation of being watched. The realization dawned that something malevolent lurked in the park, something that fed on fear and despair. Desperate to escape, they regrouped at the old Ferris wheel, now a towering, rusting relic. As they climbed into one of the creaking carriages, the wheel jolted to life, lifting them high above the park. From the top, they saw the entire layout, the forest pressing in ominously, as if trying to reclaim the land. The fog thickened, obscuring the ground below, and a chilling cry echoed through the air. Suddenly, the Ferris wheel stopped, leaving them stranded at the top. Below, dark figures emerged from the fog, moving towards the base of the ride. Stricken with terror, they realized these figures were not human, but spectral apparitions, seemingly drawn to their fear. The ghostly entities began to climb the structure, their pale faces and hollow eyes glowing in the dark. The group frantically tried to find a way down, but the controls were unresponsive. The air grew colder, their breaths visible in the icy night. Just as the figures reached them, the Ferris wheel lurched, sending them hurtling back to the ground. The ride came to a halt, but the apparitions had vanished. Disoriented but relieved to be back on solid ground, they ran toward the park entrance. The gates, however, were now closed and covered in thorny vines, as if sealing them in. Frantically, they searched for another exit, but every path seemed to lead them back to the same spot. The park felt alive, shifting and changing to trap them within its bounds. The fog thickened, and they felt an overwhelming sense of hopelessness. As they huddled together, they heard a voice on the wind, whispering secrets of the park's dark history. The group uncovered the truth. The amusement park had been built on cursed land, once a site of ancient rituals. The spirits of those wronged lingered, bound to the park and feeding off the fear of trespassers. They realized that the park's attractions were designed to torment the souls trapped within, keeping them in a perpetual cycle of fear and despair. Desperate, they decided to confront the source of the curse, following the whispers to a hidden altar deep in the woods. As they approached, the air grew colder and the shadows deepened. At the altar, they found an old, crumbling book filled with cryptic symbols and dark rituals. They understood they had to perform a cleansing ritual to break the curse and free the trapped souls, including themselves. As they began the ritual, the ground trembled, and a fierce wind whipped around them, carrying the voices of the damned. The apparitions reappeared, watching silently as the ritual progressed. Just as they completed the final chant, a blinding light engulfed the park, the oppressive darkness lifting. As the light faded, the park was eerily silent. The fog dissipated, revealing the true state of the park, decayed, forgotten, and lifeless. The spirits had been freed, leaving the park empty and devoid of the malevolent energy that had once permeated it. The group, shaken but alive, found the gates open and hurried out, never looking back. They had escaped, but the memory of the night and the horrors they faced would haunt them forever. As they left, the wind carried away the last echoes of laughter and music, leaving only silence in the abandoned park.